so fast to give in, 'cause you're the one to blame. It's unforgiving, addicted to the game. I can't tell the difference, just show me the way. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go anywhere. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go wherever you are. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go wherever you are. Got a hazy mind, and I don't know why. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go wherever you are. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go wherever you are. I've tried, just one taste of your heart, and I've tried. Go wherever you are.
Hello and welcome to Inspired Earth. Thanks for listening. We've got a lot of updates this week on some stuff that we've talked about in the past before we get into some new discoveries, and then we have a rescue at the end. So that's pretty interesting. We're going to start off with Neuralink and then go into Europa, and then we'll get into some newer stuff after that. But with Neuralink, we have the previous first guy that they had implanted. They said that 85% of the Neuralink implant wires are already detached from the patient, and the company wants to avoid further surgery. So that's pretty interesting. And it says that the FDA's already cleared another one, and they're looking for 3 more, and hopefully they're going to get it right next time. But I don't know. This is just, I feel bad for the guy, honestly. We'll see how he keeps on going. I think he gave an interview recently. But yeah, so that's the update. 85%, so only 15% of the wires actually remained attached to his brain. And yeah, so, and they're going to put it into another guy. So we'll see what happens on that next one. But so we're going to move on to Europa. And JPL and NASA released these pictures from Juno spacecraft during September 29th, 2022 flyby. And it's called the Chaos feature, apparently, nicknamed the Platypus. And that's this weird shape right here. I don't see a platypus, but I guess they did at some point. And so yeah, it's moved. And you see from this previous picture, definitely the cracks at the top have moved. And you see if I zoom in how pixelated this is? This is just crazy pixelated. I have seen pictures so much better from NASA and subsequently JPL. And how is it that we get these weird, over-the-top, grainy, like 70s looking pictures I just don't understand it. We have so much more stuff, like higher resolution pictures of this picture. Like it should not just be digital, or I mean pixels. If I zoom in, you should be able to zoom in really far and see this clearly. But why is the public not ever allowed these high resolution pictures? Um, that's something that is like really bothering me since I've been a little kid, really. And because I've seen some pictures just scrolling the internet. I've told this story a couple of times, so I'll just retell it real quick. But I was a kid in school, and our teachers would tell us to go to these government websites like NASA.gov or CIA.gov or WhiteHouse.gov, all of the standard type of stuff. And one time I was scrolling on NASA.gov, and I found these extremely high quality pictures that showed incredible things on the moon. And they weren't up for long. I just assumed that they would be there. Like I was gonna go and download them another time, and when I went to go and look again, they weren't there, of course. And that was one of the first big tough lessons of, if you find something crazy, to like save it and send it to a bunch of people. And unfortunately, I never got those pictures again, but I did find them in a TV show, or at least some of them, and I'll talk about that another time. But uh, with this, it looks really similar, and it's just so they said that this is like a natural movement, which I believe it is. I like believe that that's correct for the most part, but uh, so it's moving, and let's look into that a little bit more. They said that it's on a ice shell, which has an ocean underneath, and that they believed at one point that the ice was connected, at least at some parts, to like maybe mountains or something underneath the sea. Well, now that we see these giant cracks moving between these two pictures, you can see that there's definitely a lot of movement between these plates of ice. And yeah, so that's a lot more movement than they were anticipating. So we actually have an upcoming mission to Europa because they're extremely interested in it. And this is pictures from the Johnson or Kennedy Space Center, Kennedy Space Center, and they're assembling it at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California. Europa Clipper spacecraft has arrived at Kennedy Space Center in Florida to prepare for its mission to explore Jupiter's moon, Europa. It will study the moon's surface, ocean, and atmosphere using advanced scientific instruments. And they have it loading into a Globemaster here, C-17 Globemaster. And I'm not sure if any of you guys have seen one of these fly before, but they are breathtaking. They are literally awesome in the true meaning of the word of awesome. They will make you feel awed. And it's just crazy. They're so huge that it looks big in the air, and they'll be really far away, and you're like, wow, I can't believe that looks so big from so far away. And up close, it's ginormous. It's like a flying warehouse. It's crazy. And it's not even one of the biggest planes ever built. But anyways, the C-17 is just a beast of its own. But so they were loading it up into this thing in the picture here. And it says that it's going to be doing approximately 50 close flybys as low as 16 miles, 25 kilometers from the surface of Europa. And yeah, I wonder how many of those pictures we will get to see. It's going to be really interesting. But it should be launching this year. So we'll see. And it's supposed to arrive in the Jupiter system April 2030. And it will accomplish a few Mars flybys in February 2025, which will help propel the spacecraft towards Jupiter in a Mars-Earth gravity-assisted trajectory. It says, after 2 years of painstaking work on the spacecraft here at JPL, With the help of our partners, it was bittersweet to see the spacecraft encased in its shipping container and on its way to Florida. But we already have Europa Clipper engineers and technicians at Kennedy who are welcoming the precious cargo and are set to accomplish the final assembly and testing so that we're ready for launch. And the launch period opens October 10th, 2024. It's not too long away. So we'll all be looking at that, and I'm excited. Europa is one of my favorite moons. It's extremely fascinating. Definitely has life. If there's ET as well in our solar system, like different civilizations or species, for sure, probably, most likely, have bases in Europa. It would just make sense. So here with Venus, we have volcanic activity on Venus could be comparable to that on Earth, according to new study. And this was May 28th. And scientists have found new evidence of volcanic activity reshaping the surface of Venus, which could even suggest that its activity rivals the present-day Earth. Back in 2023, scientists analyzing archival data collected by NASA's Magellan spacecraft made the historic announcement that they had discovered direct proof of volcanic eruption on Venus that occurred between February and October 1991. The explosive force of the event had reshaped the crater on the enormous Mat Mons volcano located near the planet's equator, leaving it filled to the brim with burning lava. The discovery was a landmark moment as evidence of Venus's volcanoes helped scientists draw a clearer picture as to what has been happening beneath the surface of the tortured planet, and allows researchers to more clearly model its evolution and habitability. Now, scientists combing back through the Magellan data have found fresh evidence of volcanic activity on Venus, which may even suggest that the planet is host to a similar level of volcanism as Earth in the present day. To make their discovery, a team of researchers compared surface maps detailing the topography of two regions of the Venusian surface, as observed by the NASA spacecraft between 1990 and 1992. The first site of interest was the area surrounding Sif Mons volcano located on Venus's southern hemisphere, while the second was a region known as Niobe Planitia, which lies near the planet's equator. Venus's super dense atmosphere prevents us from simply observing the surface as you could with Earth. Instead, Magellan was able to create detailed maps of the planet's topography by bouncing radar waves off the surface and listening for the resulting echoes, or backscatter. Using this method, scientists were able to build a detailed understanding of the Venusian surface, which revealed in-depth information on its composition, height, and numerous other characteristics. And using these maps as a guide, our results show that Venus was far more volcanically active than previously thought. So here we go again, probably going to say that that makes it more suitable for life as well, because you remember there's this flip-flopping going on with whether or not there's life on Venus. So I'm willing to bet that if there's, all of this organic stuff in the atmosphere, and there's volcanism on the ground, then there's probably life, at least bacteria, maybe even plants or something like that, at the very least. At least to some capacity. I mean, they've talked about like floating life in the clouds. So, I mean, there could be like floating like algae plumes or something in the clouds or something. I have no idea, but I'm just making up stuff really based on like what they said. I could see stuff being in the atmosphere just like they said though. But here we have with Chinese spaceplane releases mysterious object in orbit months after launch. There's been very little information shared about the orbital vehicle, which launched in December 2023 for its third secretive mission. China's Curious spaceplane is at it again, releasing an unidentified object into orbit that could signal the end of its mysterious mission. The U.S. Space Force is currently tracking the mysterious object, which the reusable spaceplane appears to have released on May 24th at around 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Jonathan McDowell, an astrophysicist at Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, noted on X, this object could be a sub-satellite deployment, or it could be a piece of hardware ejected prior to an end of mission and deorbit. The spaceplane's first flight did something similar. Will be interesting to see if the plane maneuvers or lands soon. Okay, this might be kind of crass for some people, but this is just the first thing that came to my mind. He's talking about ejecting hardware prior to the end of mission and deorbit. What if that's just like a poo sack or like a little like bathroom receptacle that they're just ejecting out, and we're like, oh, what is that? We gotta study it, and it's just feces. Because I mean, they've got to put it somewhere, right? And I think that that's a crude one. I'm not sure about that, but it would be funny if it was. But I do think that they have a crewed space plane. I'm not sure that this is the robot one. They would probably say the robot space plane if it was, but it may be. The space plane launched on December 14th on board a Long March 2F carrier rocket, which took off from Jiuquan Launch Center in China. Shortly afterward, the vehicle deployed 6 objects into orbit, which appeared to be emitting various signals. The recent unidentified object suggests that it could mean the spaceplane is getting ready to land soon, after 164 days in orbit. And it says the spaceplane is owned by China's Academy of Launch Vehicle Technology, a state-owned manufacturer that makes both military and civilian space launch vehicles. And the first inaugural flight took place in 2020. The second one was in 2022 and spent 276 days in orbit. And that they've released other mysterious objects without identifying the purpose, and very little is known about it. And as the name suggests, spaceplanes are airplane spacecraft hybrids that are launched into space by rockets, functioning as orbiting spacecraft once in space and then operating like regular aircraft in Earth's atmosphere. If proven successful, spaceplanes can become valuable reusable spacecraft, meeting the growing demands for satellite launches and other missions needing transportation to space. And it says that U.S. Space Force has its own from Boeing X-37, and we talked about that one before earlier in the year. And I think it's interesting that they're talking about here that the crafts can go from different functionalities, from in atmosphere to out of atmosphere, because we're getting closer and closer to being on par with some of these UFO type of crafts, which there's a lot of different types of UFO type crafts, you know. So, but our ability, it seems to be going up and go. If we were to add C into that, I mean, we would have a craft that can go into the same mediums that these other crafts can. So we've seen, for example, the ones off of the Navy, ones in the Atlantic. I'm blanking on the name right now. I gotta look it up. The USS Nimitz. I had to look it up, and several others. That these crafts go through the air and into the water and then into space, or in not necessarily in that order, but they can go through all three. So if we were to come up with a craft like that, we would at least have something that could do the same mediums. It wouldn't be going the same speed or doing the same stuff. And I'm not even talking about for like combat. I'm just talking about just to have. I'm sure all of these military people would be thinking of that in like a military capacity, but you know, humans can go and explore stuff. This doesn't have to all be about killing stuff. Like, I feel like if we were to move past that, we would be onto exploring stuff rather than killing each other for money. But anyways, yeah, hopefully one day we will get there. But that was just some thoughts that, like, we're inching closer to having better capability crafts pretty quickly, honestly. But on that note, we're going to talk about something from Tuesday, The White House on Tuesday announced steps to modernize a major roadblock to the clean energy transformation. America's aging electrical infrastructure. The new initiative between the feds and 21 states aims to make faster fixes and improvements to the grid, committing to building a bigger and more modern grid as part of a larger effort to reduce power outages and increase electrical transmission capacity, a massive hurdle to getting more clean energy on the grid and reducing the planet warming pollution causing the climate crisis. The announcement came on the same day that hundreds of thousands of customers lost power in Texas during destructive storms Tuesday morning, following a deadly holiday weekend of severe weather across the South and Midwest. Weather-related power outages are on the rise as stronger storms put more pressure on outdated infrastructure, a recent report from a nonprofit research group, Climate Central, found. I have no idea who that climate group is. The White House and Department of Energy made the announcement at a summit for states, industry groups, and electrical regulators. Building on the Biden-Harris administration's legislative accomplishments and executive actions in tackling the grid modernization challenge, the initiative aims to bring together states, federal entities, and power sector stakeholders to help drive grid adaptation quickly and cost-effectively to meet the challenges and opportunities that the power sector faces in the 21st century. Earlier, the White House National Climate Advisor Ali Zaidi called the new initiative unprecedented and said it will drive grid adaptation quickly and cost effectively. We are investing tens of billions of dollars, the most significant public investment in a generation, to strengthen our grid to prevent power outages in the face of extreme weather, bolster U.S. energy security, and drive innovation. The U.S. currently has a major clean energy problem. There is more electricity from solar power alone waiting to get on the grid than the entire amount of energy currently on the grid. To combat the climate crisis and increase the amount of cheap energy from clean sources like wind and solar, the U.S. needs more modern high-voltage transmission lines. So that's all I'm going to read for that. I'm having to hold my tongue on some of these things, but I will say that with Germany, they are in a similar boat in that they built a lot of solar power, and they are having trouble getting the power onto the grid. Just like we are. It said that we have more power waiting to get on the grid than on the grid right now. That same thing is happening in Germany. And I would call that growing pains rather than a failure. It kind of is a failure, but also the U.S. energy security aspect was interesting as well. I wonder if we're going to get EMP protection. I saw a lot of articles coming out about EMP protection at the same time as this, which different groups have been advocating for like 20, 30 years, if not longer. So that's going to be interesting, especially as we have all of this stuff going on with the sun and the Earth's solar magnetic fields. Because if you guys remembered, our poles are supposed to flip in the next couple months. And we're having really heavy solar stuff. And if you remember, those two in combination could be worse together than separate. Obviously. But so it's kind of interesting that they're doing this at this time. It's a little bit late if it's really severe. But we'll keep an eye on that. So far, I saw some data that had just come out, or like a study about the poles, and they said that they were moving, and that stuff like it was kind of regular, like that it was moving, but it wasn't anything to be concerned about, is what they're saying so far still. So like the poles, like we said before, the poles flip, and that's just a regular thing. It doesn't mean that it's going to be catastrophic. And the poles flipping are different than pole moving. So it's kind of nuanced.